Hey everyone, this is Dana from NexGen, and welcome to Me Inc. Week 5. I hope that you're having a fabulous Friday at the end of 2021 so that you guys can see me, that you know that I'm actually here. Let me go ahead and say hello to everybody, and I do have my notes. So, welcome to Me Inc. So, what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about rental do's and don'ts. But before we do that, I wanted to let you know that we have an exciting lineup for you in 2022. We did a fantastic job in 2021, but I am really excited about what's going to be coming your way in 2022. So make sure that you are subscribed to the channel and also take a look at the previous videos because a lot of the things that we're going to be discussing will make sense to you when you look at the newer videos. So, really happy that you're here with me today. So, again, what we're talking about is rental do's and don'ts. Now, if you remember back in week 2 of our series um, in the Me Inc. series, we talked about putting together your budget, and we were using Angela's budget. And before Angela became a homeowner, she actually rented her home or rented a property. So she learned some things that I wanted to share with you because not only did this happen once, but it happened twice where she did not get her deposit back. So this video or this live stream is not only for the brand spanking new person that is going to be renting, but also for those that are renting property now. So, whether you're moving out of your parents' house, um, you left the dorm room when you graduated from college, or like me, you left military family housing. Um, your first time apartment is sort of a rite of passage. It's either moving into adulthood or you're doing something different. So let's take a look at what we're going to be talking about today. So I thought I would say rental do's and don't, what I would consider a smooth move. And you'll see what I'm talking about in a minute. So just to give you an overview of what we're going to be discussing this evening, going out and looking for the place that you want to live for a period of time. And again, not everybody is going to be buying houses. Again, there might be a variety of reasons. It may not make sense for you to purchase a home at this time. It could be for one, financial reasons. It could be that you may not want to live in that particular area or you want to get a feel for that area. So, again, you may choose to rent as opposed to purchasing your home. Another thing is that when you're looking for your home, you want to look out for what I call rental scams. Because believe me, they are out there and they are looking to take your money. So, we're going to talk about some of the things that you want to look for when you are looking for a place to live. Also, if applicable, there may be application fees that you may have to pay. And of course, that is not an absolute, but these are some of the things that you want to keep in mind when you're renting a place. Some of the things that you want to do when you move in. And the reason why I'm going over these things is because I want you to have a positive rental experience. So I need to let you know what that looks like. What to do when you move out or before you decide you want to move out. What happens if you have a deposit, if there's damage to the property, and basically be done. And as I said before, in the scenario that we had with Angela, there was a challenge with the deposit. And I'm going to tell you how you can overcome these sorts of situations. Okay, so now we're going to go look for a house. So what you want to do is determine your budget. Now, in previous Meet Inks, we talked about your budget. And you may see in some, when you do your reading and your research, you may find that the rule of thumb is that you have no more than 30% of your gross income. Well, if you've been with us at, at NexGen for some time, you know that your gross income actually means nothing. It's your net, what you actually bring home. That's what's going to determine what's going to go into your budget. And also, you want to look at the neighborhood, and that also plays into your budget as well. For example, let's say that you pick a place that's closer to your work, or you pick a place that's closer to your children. If you have children, your children's school. If it's closer to public transportation, is it in an area that's quiet? If you like quiet, do you like hustle and bustle? Is it near restaurants and attractions that you would want to um, partake in? So these are the types of things that you want to look at when you're looking for a place to live. So one, you got your budget that you need to find out what you can afford. You're going to choose the neighborhood based on what your needs are. And then you're going to decide if you need a roommate. Now, my rule of thumb for a roommate is you want to select a property that you can afford on your own. And the reason I say that is because you may have a roommate that if you sign the rental agreement and they sign the rental agreement, there may be a challenge to where that roommate moves out. And I will let you know that even if the roommate moves out, or there's a situation where you could decide you don't want to be roommates anymore, you can still be held responsible for the rent at that property. So these are some of the things that you want to make sure that you do. Again, when you're deciding on a roommate, uh, and sometimes having a roommate is like um, like a sibling or something like that. They have just as much right as you do to the property. So you want to make sure that they are compatible with you. So someone that you would want to be with for that entire year. Also, you want to take a look at the parking situation. Is it parking that you need to pay for? Do you have a vehicle where you need to um, have parking? Is it close to where you live? Some people have security concerns where they have to be able to look outside to see their vehicle. Is there enough parking for any guests that you may have? These are some of the things that you want to look for when you are selecting the place that you want to rent. So is it assigned parking? Is it covered? I prefer covered parking. And if you're in an area where there's a lot of snow, some people prefer garages. So there are some places that have covered parking, assigned parking. So you know exactly, like if you come home at night, you have a place to park. Also, you want to look at some amenities. So some apartment complexes or some places that you would want to rent, they have swimming pools, they have fitness centers, they have balconies, they have rooftop terraces. They have so many amenities, especially in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, so that they can attract people um, to rent from them. Also, you want to consider the floor that you want to be on, whether it be the top floor. Some people don't like to have people that would be on top of them because you have people that would actually be walking above them. So these are the types of things that you would want to look into. Okay, choosing your floor, whether you want to be on the top floor. Some places have elevators, and if you get a place that has an elevator, um, are you willing to maybe at times have to use the staircase because um, the elevator may be out for maintenance, or you may have a situation where there's a fire. So those are the kinds of considerations you want to look into when you're looking for a place to live. Timing. Now, this is what we mean by timing. Sometimes apartment complexes or places that are renting, they may have specials that they're running. They may have it where the kids are out of school. So that's usually the time where they may have specials. So timing is very important when you are looking for a place to live. Now, I say in here to give yourself some time. And the reason why I say that is that you don't want to be looking for a place when you are anxious or when you feel you're desperate, because you're going to maybe skip some steps that you shouldn't be skipping. So you want to make sure that you give yourself some time to do your homework, to do your research, again, to find out if you need um, or you would like to have a roommate. Um, Also, if you, one of the things I didn't talk about is if you have a pet, you want to make sure that where you're going to live will allow for pets. These are different things that you want to do or look into when you are house hunting. And sometimes the places give you what we call tours. So make a list of the questions that you would want to ask when you are doing the tour. Now, sometimes people look at the noise level, how close they are to certain people, and those types of things. So if you have questions prepared for when you go on the tour, and then if you have subsequent questions after that, make sure that you get those questions answered. And as I said before, um, you want to make sure that you beware of what we call rental scams. And you're like, well, what do you mean when we talk about rental scams? Unfortunately, they're more prevalent than you would think. So, what do we mean when we talk about rental scam? So, what a rental scam is it's a fraudulent activity by a person who claims to rent a property that is not theirs, it doesn't exist, or the rent is different than what was advertised. The main goal of the rental scam artist is to collect the money from you in the form of application fees, pet fees, security deposits, and rent from a prospective tenant without providing the advertised rental property. Now, to avoid rental scams, we need to take a look at what I call some red flags. So, as I said before, a rental scam is if someone doesn't have a property that they're going to rent, it isn't theirs to rent, it doesn't exist, or it's what I call a bait and switch. It's different than what was advertised, and they're going to collect money from you for something that you did not want. So let's take a look at types of rental scams. Okay, I think, let me see, we have a few here. Okay, the first one is what we call forever vacant. And forever vacant is where the scammer shows an apartment to prospective renters, collects application fees, and never rents it out. And some of the properties can be on the market for years without ever being rented. And sometimes the con artist rents the property for himself or herself. So again, one rental scam is forever vacant. Now, we have another one called a phantom rental. And this is where the con artist fakes a listing for places that either don't exist or they're not for rent. So those will be called the phantom rentals. And then, as I talked about before, is the bait and switch. The property advertised is not the same property that the victim is signing the lease. That's the property that they wanted. Sometimes the victims are even shown the apartment, but it's different than the one that is stated in their contract. And we're going to talk about contracts in a minute. Then what we have, another one we have is called hijacked ads. And this is where a fake landlord posts advertisements for a real property with altered contact information. The home for sale is relisted as rentals in this type of fraud. And I think it's what we call on the MLS. So it's something that they take that's an already ad that's posted. Now, if you remember in our previous live streams, we had Damon Holland, who actually, not only is he a realtor, but he also can help as far as rental properties. So you can have a real estate agent that can not only help you when you purchase a property, they can also help you with rentals. And that's why this dealing with a real estate agent will help cut down on some of these rental scams. And then we have another one that's called already leased. And this is where the scammer collects application fees and or security deposits, and we'll talk about that in a minute, for a property that is already leased. So this is just really, really bad. And then the last but not least is what we call missing amenities. And this is a rental property that's advertised that has all these amenities, and they use the list of all these amenities to collect a higher rent. And then the landlord will get the renter to sign the lease agreement before they notice that there are what we call missing amenities. So when we talked about amenities, we were talking about a swimming pool, we were talking about a clubhouse. There's different things that they would advertise to say, hey, this is the reason why we're charging higher rent. It's because it has all these wonderful things. But when you sign the lease agreement, you find out it doesn't have a gym, you don't have access to all these amenities that they promised. So that's what we call the missing amenities. So here are some red flags to help you identify a rental scam. Okay, let me go ahead and look at my notes. Okay, the person who posted the listing is away on a business trip or on a vacation. This is a common type of fraud. This is the person that's out of the country, so they can't show you the apartment. They're going to offer you a lower rent for any inconvenience because they're not there. So they might send you fake keys. Now, this is the thing. They'll send you fake keys, lower the rent, but they want you to pay that security deposit before you sign the lease. So that's one red flag. And of course, the price is too good to be true. You find the perfect rental, great location, upgraded amenities, and it's cheaper than any other apartment in the area. Okay, you think this is a good deal, but I hate to tell you, but it's probably a scam. That's my too good to be true. Now, this is something that I learned early on in my adulthood, if you will. The listing has too many grammatical errors or uncommon spellings. If you ever deal with anything like this, I highly recommend that you get a real estate professional Another one would be you don't have an address or there's no pictures of the property and you can't find it on Google Maps. That's a red flag. All right, let's say that you find a property, but they don't do a background check or a credit check. They don't do any screening. Of course, they're not going to do any screening because they're going to take your money. They can care less whether you can afford that property or not. As long as you can afford the application fee or security deposit, they're going to be requesting from you. That's a red flag. Okay, we have ads that stay on the website for over a month on an area that's very popular. Beware of that. And then, now this is something that's very important. The landlord or the real estate agent asks you to wire the money or use what we call an unprotected third-party service. They may ask you to transfer the money by way of Western Union, Venmo, or PayPal. Now, this was something that I just learned about, but wire transfers are basically the same as giving them cash. So you can't get it back if you transfer the money these ways, especially the wire transfer. Now, they may want you to sign the lease or pay the deposit before you even see the deposit. They're going to be using some hard selling techniques. And they're saying, hey, this rental is very popular. You need to jump on this. And there's a lot of people that are interested in this. Beware. Pay attention. Then we have what we call images of the apartment that has watermarks. Now, these watermarks may have been stolen from the rightful owner. So make sure that you are careful about that. So here's some things that you can do to avoid being scammed. Number one, do your due diligence. Study the area, the rental market, check the prices. You'll know if it's too good to be true when you do your research. If you find the same listing but it's on various sites, you want to make sure that the contact information for those various sites are the same. That way you'll know if that listing was hijacked. Also, if the landlord or the management property, if they don't ask for a credit report or they don't even talk about a background check, that's something that you want to steer clear of. Always make sure that you verify that the property is the property that is legitimate before you pay the deposit or any type of whether you pay the deposit or any type of application fee. Make sure that that property is actually legitimate. Also, if you can't find that address on Google Maps, it probably doesn't exist. And if you have not seen the place in person, skip it. Go on to the next one. And do not pay a security deposit or the first month's rent before you sign the lease. So signing of the lease comes first, then you pay the security deposit. And that's if it's applicable, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So before you look at the property, and even after the property, you want to go around and talk to the neighbors. And then you want to know, hey, is this person the legitimate landlord? How long has it been vacant? What other things have been going on in that area? Again, doing your due diligence. Do not, under any circumstances, give out your social security number or bank account information before finding out whether this landlord or property holder is legitimate, because they could use your information for other things. And we're going to talk about that next week. Also, last but not least, Don't give cash, wire money, or use Venmo or PayPal. They might tell you, the scammer, that PayPal goods is safe for business transactions, but they often forget to mention that PayPal's buyer protection does not cover real estate transactions. So either use a check or credit card. So these are some of the things that you can do to avoid being scammed. Now, these are some, there might be some others that I don't know about, so please feel free to put that in the comment section. So, spent a lot of time on rental scams because unfortunately, I know of a couple of people that unfortunately had to deal with this. And of course, they had to get the police involved. So, these are things that you need to do to look out for rental scams. These are red flags. You got the type of rental scams, and then things that you can do so that you do not fall victim to the rental scam. All right, so let's get ready. So if you have a significant other, you definitely want to have a conversation with them. And actually, the conversation should be occurring when you decide you want to rent, because you're going to be doing your budget and you want to budget for any upfront costs. Now, I did talk about a security deposit, which may or may not be applicable. There may be a application fee that may or may not be applicable. And the reason why I say that it may or may not be applicable is some people, whether they be military or they work for the federal government or for someone in that area or an industry, sometimes the apartment complex or the people that are renting the property may be giving a discount or waiving application fees or even security deposits. So when you're doing your due diligence, these are some of the things that you want to look into. So the security deposit could be a fixed amount. It could be first and last month's rent. And if you have a pet, it could be first and last month's pet rent, if you have that. Now, you want to make sure that you study your lease regarding the terms of getting your security deposit back, as well as any conditions for reimbursement. And I'm going to talk about that in a little bit later. But one of the things that I wanted to caution you on is if you have a pet, you want to make sure that that is in your lease. If you move into the property and you don't have a pet at the time, but you decide you want to have a pet after you move in, you want to make sure that that's included in the lease. If you have people that are living with you, make sure that they are on the lease. And sometimes the lease will say you don't have to add them if they're not going to be there more than 10 days. And I'm going to tell you why that's important. Because it may affect whether you get your deposit back. And let's say you don't pay a deposit. Well, the landlord or the management company may be able to take action against you if you do not comply to the terms and conditions of your lease agreement. And we will definitely be talking about that in a second. Consider your future expenses, for example, furniture, appliances, different things. Make sure that that's included in your budget. And when we say gather up paperwork, what we're talking about there is the paperwork that the landlord or apartment complex may want you to provide to them. So it could be information to get your credit score, your rental history, if applicable, proof of income, and they may do this by way of pay stubs or your W-2. You may have past landlords. You want to have that information, um, personal references, and sometimes you may need to provide your social security number. Now, if you are doing, the only way they would be able to do a credit check on you is to provide your social security number. So again, be careful about that. Now, because if you're a first-time renter, unless there's some specials or special provisions that there may have for you, you may need to get what we call, it's not a co-signer, but someone that signs to vouch for you. If that, hopefully that's a parent. Um, if not, someone that you're really close to that can vouch for you. So those are some of the things that you may want to consider when you are a first-time renter. Okay. Then we have some checklists that you may have to do, and these are things, again, that you may need to furnish your apartment. All right, so I was talking about the lease agreement. So one of the things that's extremely important is that you want to make sure that you not only read the lease agreement or the rental agreement, but that you understand it, because it is a contract that you will be held accountable to. And so will the renter, of course. But this is something that I want to make sure that I um, highlight for you. And one of the reasons why I say that is because one of the things that's in the Maryland um, lease agreements, and hopefully that they have it in there, is that you would be entitled to your deposit back minus any outside of the wear and tear. And in some cases, they may have a utility, like a water bill, that's tied to it. And they have to give it back to you within a certain period of time. Again, make sure that you have that lease agreement. Make sure you read and understand the lease agreement. Now, if you sign it, make sure that you get a copy of it. Now, it's preferable that you get the copy that both you and the landlord signs. But if for some reason they are, I hear that so many times, oh, we're busy, we're not going to be able to do it. You take out that cell phone that you have, anything that you sign, you take a picture of it and come back the day or the next business day to make sure you get an executed copy of that contract. Because again, you're going to be held responsible for it. And as I said before, make sure that there's disclosures as far as any pets that you may have. Now, in certain counties, there are certain pets that you cannot have. And some apartment complex or rental places prefer that you not have pets. You want to make sure that you've done your homework up front. And if that's the case, then you want to make sure that you adhere to the terms and conditions of your rental agreement. Another thing is what we call renter's insurance. Now, a lot of places have it as a requirement and some do not. I highly recommend that if, whether it's a requirement or not, that you get renter's insurance. And as I said before in my previous video, renter's insurance, the type of renter's insurance that you can get, can extend past where you're living. If something happens to where your property gets damaged because of something you've done or something someone else has done, then you are covered by your renter's insurance. Another thing, if applicable, is you want to make sure that for the people that are in the armed services, that they have what we call a military clause. And I believe I have additional information in the description below. So you want to make sure that the military clause is included in your contract. Sometimes they have it in there, but you definitely want to make sure that it is there before you rent that property. Anything that you sign, you want to make sure that you keep it off the out. You want to keep it off site. And what I mean by that is you don't want to keep any documents pertaining to your lease agreement or any receipts for paying your rent. Make sure that it's not kept on the property. Make sure it's kept off site. Hopefully, I won't have to tell you the reason why. Also, another thing is if you're close to your parents, you want to make sure that they're either on the lease agreement or they have an extra key. And the reason why I say that is for some reason, if something happens to where you get locked out of your apartment, there is a fee for someone that has to come to that apartment to let you in. So if someone that you trust, preferably your parent, has a copy of that, is authorized a copy of that key, you can go there to pick up an extra copy or pick up that key. Or they can let you in, or if something should happen to you, someone can go into the apartment and they can get what you asked them to get. So again, keep those documents and the receipt off site, off the premises. Okay, now you're getting ready to move in. A lot of times, landlords, especially in apartment complexes, they have apartments that are like the model, but it's different from the apartment that you actually will have. You want to make sure you know which apartment it is that you're going to be moving into. So you want to do the walkthrough with the landlord. And the reason why you want to do the walkthrough with the landlord is because if there's anything wrong with the property, you can document it right then and there. If there's anything wrong with the property and you don't document it, then they can say that it was you that damaged the property. So you want to do the walkthrough with the landlord. Now, sometimes the landlord may not be available. So which they may give you a worksheet. You want to go through the property and go through the worksheet and note any challenges there are with the apartment or the rental. And what you want to do is you want to communicate that to them in writing. Whatever you say makes no difference. Whatever they say means nothing. You want to, all communications must be in writing. And you want to do it within 3 days of the walkthrough, unless your lease agreement says different. Make sure that you take pictures of the apartment or the property before you move in. And you also want to keep those photos off-site as well. Make sure you know what utilities you're responsible for. That's important. A lot of times they include it in the agreement, but just in case, you need to make sure. Number one, because you want to make sure that those payments are included in your budget so that you pay them on time. Because a lot of times, if you don't pay your utilities, it could be tied to the breach of your contract. And I will tell you why that's very important. Also, you want to secure your valuables because I will tell you this, the property that you're renting is not yours. So any valuables that you have, you want to secure them before you leave that property. You have renter's insurance, but again, you don't want to tempt anyone. You also want to comply with the terms and conditions of that contract, and that includes paying your rent on time. Now, this is really for the new renter. A lot of times, the rent is due on the first of the month, but they sometimes give you what we call a grace period. So, for example, the rent would be due on the 1st of January. And of course, the 1st of January is on a Saturday. for this year. And the 31st of December is a holiday. So they may give you a 3 to 4 to 5 day grace period so that after, let's say, the 5th of January, you may be incurring late fees. My recommendation to you is that you pay the rent at least 2 weeks or the 15th of the previous month. For example, if the rent is due on the 1st of January, you want to pay it around or between the 15th and the 20th of December. And there's two reasons why I say that. Number one, things happen. And you get more grace with the landlord, in my personal opinion, if you're consistently paying the rent on time. Another reason why you want to pay it early is because sometimes the rent, if you pay it in the mail or you pay it on bill pay or something like that, sometimes the rent is not received. Something may be going wrong. This gives you the opportunity to make sure that they receive the rent on time. So when you do your budget, my recommendation is that you pay the rent before the 1st, between the 15th and the 20th of the previous month. That is my recommendation. Also, if you can, I have on here befriend your neighbors. And the reason I say that is because a lot of times, if you have a package or something like that, you have someone that you think will look out for you if there's any challenges or anything like that. So it's a good idea, if you can, to befriend your neighbors. All right, let's say that you signed a lease for a year or two, and you found this fabulous house that you want to move into, or you find another property that you want to move to. If you look at your lease, it will tell you the parameters for how you communicate that you are no longer going to be in that property. So let's say that you sign a 12 months lease or even a 15 months lease. They usually communicate to you within the 10th or 11th month. They're going to ask you, do you want to sign a new lease? So you want to communicate within the time frame specified in your lease agreement whether you want to continue or sign a new lease, or whether you want to move out. Again, you want to make sure this is communicated in writing. Now, this is something that you definitely want to get a receipt as they received it. Whether you take it down and have them sign saying that they received it. This is if you're moving out. They sign saying, hey, I'm going to move out. This is my last day, or what have you. Now, a lot of times what they do is after your lease agreement, they may put you on what we call a month to month. Not a great idea, but let's say that you're in between moving to the different properties. You definitely want to make sure everything is communicated in writing. You also want to provide a forwarding address. It doesn't necessarily have to be the address of where you're going to move to. It could be your parents' address. The reason why providing a forwarding address is important is especially if you are expecting your deposit back. They need to know where to send it. So that's why you want to make sure you provide a forwarding address. Also, if there's any communication after the fact, you want to make sure they have the address. You don't want your landlord to say, hey, there was no way I could communicate or provide this information to my previous tenant. When you decide you want to move out, you want to do the walkthrough with the landlord, preferably with them walking through with that same checklist that they used. Now, sometimes they're not available. I don't know why, but sometimes they're not available. If they're not available, then I want you to do is take your phone and I want you to videotape the property. Before I forget, Um, I know that I said to communicate in writing. If there's anything that's wrong with the property, let's say the dishwasher's not working or the washer and dryer's not working, if there's anything that needs to be repaired, make sure you notify your landlord as soon as possible in writing, because the longer you take to have that item fixed, it could cause more damage. So that's why you want to let them know as soon as possible in writing. So again, going back to doing the walkthrough, you want to do the walkthrough with the landlord. If the landlord's not available, do the walkthrough and fill out the moving out form if they have one. If not, then you make sure you annotate that the landlord was not available and you do have a videotape of the property on the date that you're going to be moving out and you're going to turn in the key. When you turn in the key or anything else that you need to turn in, you make sure that you get a signed receipt from the landlord. If they don't give you a signed receipt, they don't get the key. Okay? If you have a deposit, the deposit must be returned, minus anything that is going on with the property. And that could be the last water bill. Hopefully, it's not damage to the property. So, this is when things go wrong. Okay? Let's say that you call the landlord and one of the amenities was the washer and dryer on the property or in your unit. And let's say the washer and dryer was not fixed or was not working half of the time. You're not allowed to prorate. I'm talking about in the state of Maryland. I can't speak for any other state. You're not allowed to unilaterally prorate the rent. And this is what I mean by that. Let's say that you're paying $1,000 in rent and you feel that $50 is appropriate to withhold from your landlord because the washer and or dryer was not working. Unless you get an agreement in writing from the landlord, you pay the rent in full. You document and provide it in writing that these items were not fixed. You do not withhold rent. When you communicate, make sure that you get it in writing, return receipt, that they received it. And the reason why you want to do this is you want to preserve your rights. Okay. Now I have a cautionary tale for you. This happened to Angela, not once, but twice. Okay. Angela had, and this is in the state of Maryland, so that we have a context of what's going on. So I will tell you what happened. I'll tell you what happened both times. Okay, so the first time, Angela paid the rent on time and complied with the terms and conditions of the rent. This is the first time. She communicated in writing at the appropriate time that she was going to be moving out. She also provided a forwarding address. After about 2 months, she noticed that she did not receive her deposit back. So when she didn't receive her deposit back, she wrote to her previous landlord and said, "Hey, I didn't get my deposit back." And they blew her off. So what she did was she got in contact with an attorney. The attorney drafted a letter to the landlord. And again, this is the state of Maryland. And basically said, hey, if you don't, in accordance with Maryland statute, this, you are to return the deposit back within X amount of days. If you don't do it within the terms and conditions of the contract, you are obligated to pay 3 times the amount. So if the deposit was $500, then she would be entitled to $1,500. In addition to that, if she paid the attorney a fee to draft this letter, they would also have to pay the attorney's fees. Okay, this happened once. So when the attorney sent the letter, they promptly sent the deposit back with a, the 3 times the deposit, and included the amount that was paid to the attorney, and of course, with a non-disclosure agreement. So don't tell anybody we did this, okay? That happened once. Now, fast forward a few years. Angela moved out. She complied with the terms and conditions of her contract. Now, the difference that happened here was that when she signed the contract, she didn't get a copy of it. That's why I said it's very important that you get a copy of the contract. Also, she did have, what she did have is the receipt that showed that she paid the deposit and that she paid her rent on time. So she did have that, okay? So this happened when she went back to them and said, hey, I didn't get my deposit back. Oh, we'll get it to you. So this time they didn't ignore her. They said, oh yeah, we'll get it to you. Following month, hey, where's my deposit? Hey, we're working on it. You didn't get it yet? Oh, my bad. Okay. All right. So this went on for about a year and a half. It wasn't until we sent, she sent a demand letter to them, return receipt, that basically said, you have to give me, because you did not give me my deposit back in the time required, you owe me 3 times the deposit. So what they did was they gave her, now this is like 18 plus months later, they gave her the deposit minus the water bill, which what they were supposed to have given 18 plus months ago. However, that was not the statute. The statute says if you go past this date, you're automatically, well, not automatically, but you're entitled to 3 times the amount that you pay for the deposit. And that's why I'm saying it's very important for you to adhere to the terms and conditions of the contract. So what ended up happening was they went to court. Now you would think this would be very easy, except this happened right before the shutdown. So the courts were actually closed. So when she finally got a court date, they brought up the fact that, hey, you don't have a lease agreement. And I'm telling you, these are why you want to have the things that I'm talking to you about, because I don't want you to have to find yourself in a position of not getting what you are entitled to. At the end of the day, they ended up paying 3 times the amount of the deposit because they were not in compliance with the terms and conditions of the contract, of the lease agreement. That could very well have gone the other way had Angela not complied with the terms and conditions of her contract, of the contract rather. So I did this live stream because I wanted to give people that were going to be new renters the information they need to know to make sure they have a positive rental experience. Like I said before, when you graduate from high school, when you leave your parents' home, when you graduate from college, when you leave military family housing, like I did, and you go into a rental situation, you need to know what your rights are. Well, before that, you need to know the things that you need to do so that you can have a pleasant experience to get the rental property that you want to live in for a period of time. And when you decide you want to move, that you have a pleasant experience. I don't see any questions in the chat, but I did want to thank you for allowing me to share this time with you. If you have any additional questions, hopefully there's information in the description that you can use to look and do your research. or you can put it in the comment section. Again, Happy New Year, and I will see you in 2022.